Okay, let's be honest. Corporate financial reports, they can be, well, a little dense, right? They're just packed with numbers, legal jargon, all these footnotes. But, hidden inside all that complexity, there's always a story. And today, we're going to crack the code on one company's latest report and find that story. So let's just dive right in.
So the big question is, what's a 40-page report like this really trying to tell us? We're going to treat this thing like it's a detective's evidence file. Seriously. We'll be looking for clues, trying to piece together a picture of the company's health, its big strategy, and maybe even the dangers it sees lurking around the corner.
And our subject for this investigation, it's a company called Marsh McLennan. Now, you might not know that name off the top of your head, but trust me, they are a massive player in the global economy. They're a professional services firm that basically advises other huge companies on everything: risk, strategy, people, you name it.
And this is our main piece of evidence. It's called a Form 10-Q. Think of it as a mandatory report card that companies have to file every quarter with the SEC. For us, it's a direct line into what the company's been up to, and more importantly, what they're thinking.
Okay, so what do these guys actually do? Well, their business is pretty much split down the middle. On one side, you've got risk and insurance services. These guys are one of the world's biggest insurance brokers. On the other side, you've got consulting. That's where they advise companies on things like employee benefits or even high-level corporate strategy.
All right, every good investigation starts in the same place, right? You follow the money. So let's look at our first clue.
So the first big number that jumps out of the report is this one. In just one quarter, Marsh McLennan pulled in almost $6.5 billion in revenue. I mean, that is a huge number, but it's only part of the story.
Because, after you pay all the bills, the salaries, all the operating costs, the taxes, this is what's left over. That's the profit, or net income. $747 million. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. When we compare this to last year, and boom, here it is. This is the central mystery of our whole case. Look at this. Revenue is up by over $650 million compared to the same time last year. That's fantastic growth. But the net income, the profit, it's completely flat. Now, when you see a company's sales growing like crazy, but its profit isn't moving, that's a huge clue that something else is going on. It means costs are rising just as fast. So the question is, where did all that new money go? Okay, so we need to find the motive here. What's driving all this growth in revenue, and why isn't it hitting the bottom line? Let's try to uncover the company's growth engine. And wouldn't you know it, the 10-Q gives us a pretty big hint. It looks like the company has been on a shopping spree. They've been acquiring a ton of other firms, both on the insurance side and the consulting side. It's a classic strategy. If you want to grow fast, you buy it, instead of building it from the ground up. So what's the price tag for all these companies? Well, in just the first 9 months of the year, the report tells us they spent $337 million. That's a pretty hefty investment, all aimed at just bolting on new sources of revenue.
So here's the key takeaway. Marsh McLennan is basically fueling its big revenue numbers by buying other companies. And look, that's a totally common and powerful way to grow, but it's not free. It comes with all kinds of costs, things like integrating the new companies, paying bonuses to keep key people, and that starts to explain why all that booming revenue isn't quite turning into higher profit, at least not yet.
But, like any good detective story, the plot is definitely thickening. Because growing a business this massive, well, it's not without its dangers. So let's take a look at the risks that the company itself sees coming up on the horizon. Yeah, part of this whole 10-Q process is that the company has to list out its biggest worries for the future. And it's a really fascinating peek into their mindset. So what keeps them up at night? Well, things like global conflicts, ransomware and cyber attacks, getting disrupted by AI, navigating all these complex global rules, and of course the big one, getting sued if they make a mistake.
And that last point about getting sued, that is definitely not just a what-if scenario. The report goes into detail about one very specific, very high-stakes legal battle they're fighting right now. It's all connected to the pretty dramatic collapse of a company called Green Silk Capital.
And check this out. Here's a direct quote from the filing that just shows you the insane scale of this thing. The people suing in this case, they're claiming losses of about, get this, $5 billion. Now, to be fair, Marsh McLennan is just one of several companies involved here, but still, a number with a B next to it is a huge risk you absolutely have to manage. Okay, so we have a clear growth strategy on one hand and some really serious risks on the other. So what's the game plan? How is the company planning to steer the ship through all of this?
Well, the answer's laid out right there in the report. They've got a new 3-year restructuring plan they've branded the Thrive program. And the goals are pretty much what you'd expect. Polish up the brand, give clients more value, grow faster, and, this is the crucial part, become way more efficient.
But a big restructuring like this, it is not cheap. The company figures the total cost of this whole Thrive program is going to be around $500 million over the next 3 years. That is a major internal investment, for sure.
And don't think this is just some plan for the future. It's happening right now. The report shows that in just the last quarter, they already spent $38 million on it, mostly on things like severance for employees and hiring outside help. The gears are definitely already turning on this one.
All right, we've examined all the evidence, we followed the money, we figured out the motive, we looked at the risks, and we saw the game plan. So I think it's time to step back and deliver the final verdict on what this story is all about.
So here's the story that the numbers in this report really tell. The good news? The company's revenue is growing strong, mostly because they're on that acquisition spree. The bad news? They're facing some serious threats from the outside world, not to mention that massive lawsuit that could get very expensive. And the plan? It's this huge $500 million internal project to try and get more efficient and keep that growth going for the long haul.
And all of that leaves us with one big final question, right? We've got this clear plan. Grow by buying other companies, but at the same time, they're dealing with these huge risks and the super expensive internal cleanup. So the real question the numbers can't answer, not yet anyway, is this. Will their new Thrive strategy be enough to let them, thrive? Will it be enough to navigate the storm and finally turn all that impressive revenue into actual, real profit? I guess we'll just have to wait for the next evidence file to find out.